Hi guys, welcome to another episode of T.N.T Garage and Performance. And those of you that are returning, thanks for coming back. And for those that are new, what I'm standing in front of is my 1973 Checker Marathon that I'm building into a gasser. Used to be a basket case, basically turned into a complete ground up build. So, that out of the way, I've got a fun project for today on this car. Now, I say fun in the sense that, like, your wife tells you, oh, it's going to be fun to go to the children's choir recital thing. You know, you just go in there to watch your child because you love them and support them, but you got to mow through all the other kids that get up there and just butcher whatever they're doing. Oh, my God. But wait. Well, then little Timmy gets on stage. You could tell his parents don't let him express himself at home, so he just starts going off the handle. Just dancing around, all that. It's like, all right, this is getting pretty good. That's right, Timmy. Floss your little brains out. Hell, give me a beer. This is better than Monday Night Football. That kind of fun is what we're going to be having today. So let's get to it. Well, I think the proper place to start with working on this front end tilt setup is that obviously our fenders and our hood are separate parts. So we're going to have to figure out how to attach all this together. Now, I could bring it together and weld it, or in order to get it right where I want it, we can drill holes from the inner fender here through the lip of the hood after we get it all lined up and bolt everything together. So we'll have this bolted together tight against these little rubber nubs, and that'll give us the proper looking gaps and all that. And then we can work on getting these sucked in, putting the fasteners back in to hold the fenders to the body, and then get the front end at the height it needs to be to match the body lines. We have proper gaps and all that. Then we'll make sure that the body is 100% set where it needs to be on the chassis, side to side anyway. And then we can start laying out our tilt hinge, which I'm going to fabricate a sliding tilt hinge so I don't have to cut my fenders like you see on a lot of gassers. I'll be able to pull the whole clip forward and then tilt it, and then we'll figure out something to capture the fender as it comes down into its final position, hopefully without having to use like hood pins down here. We could just put pins up at the top to hold the clip down. So first step, let's get all this lined up. I'm actually probably going to level the clip first, get those attached, and then probably drill the holes and get the hood bolted to both fenders. Now I'll grab my trusty tape measure here, and I'm just going to go down to the frame and measure from the frame itself to the inner rocker panels, and that'll give me the idea that my body is centered on the chassis side to side. So we'll see what we got. So from the chassis at the front, we are about 12 1/8 on that side. We're a little more over here. We're about 12 1/2. Well, 12 5/8. So the body in the front can actually be shifted to the driver's side a little bit from the looks of it. We'll measure the back and then also take into account where the rear tires sit in the wheel wells, which it looks correct, but we won't know until we measure it. So from in front of the spring pocket, we got 10 3/8 and 10 7/8. We got minimal stick out on that side. And a little bit over here. So from the looks of it, and I'll do some more measurements just before I move the body, it looks like the body can actually entirely shift about 1/4 of an inch or so, maybe a little more, to the driver's side of the car. So like I said, I'm going to take a few more measurements and then I'll loosen up the body bolts because they're not in a bushing that centers itself in the mount hole right now. It's just on 3/4 plywood. I think it's 3/4, probably 3/4 plywood right now until we get bushings, so I can just push the body over and lock it back down. So more measurements, make sure. Well, as you can see by me being covered in floor dirt, I got the body moved over. It's now centered on the chassis, so we don't have to worry about that. Next step is going to be pretty much get the front clip attached back to the body and level with the body. The first thing I gotta do is remove the hood because there is some bolt locations under the hood to hold the weapons. Now, if I could ever remember how to release this attach that I need to get rid of. There it is. Plug the cords. Get the hood out of the way. Nice thing about working on an old car like this, I don't care about scratching the paint. So let's get the hood set over here. There. Now we can get at our inner fender location. So the first thing I'm going to do is grab the floor jack, get it up under the quarter support, and get this front clip up where it needs to be. Then we can bolt it on. Then we can put the hood back on, bolt it all together, and get to making our hinges. So first step, get a bunch of pieces of wood that I use for removing the body. There we go. I think that's a little too high. I know it doesn't need much. I don't even know what size bolts those are, or if we even have them anymore. That might work. Don't actually have to use the right bolts, just jam some in. That gap looks pretty good. We'll move over to this side, get her sucked up and in, and then we can continue on doing whatever I started doing. There's that screwdriver. Oh, it's on the other side of the car. Every project is a process of walking back and forth around your vehicle. You don't get 1,000 steps a day in doing this, you're doing something wrong. So, we can kind of continue on. I'm going to actually try and block that up so I don't have to worry about it, so I can pull the jack out. And then we can throw the hood back on and get it bolted in. So, give me a minute to reorganize and we'll get to drilling some more, I guess. Well, I stood here and looked at it and I had a little bit of change of plan. So I've got It's sitting on the chassis with no jack under it, so it won't move. I've got it bolted in up at the cowl. Now I was thinking, if I put the hood on and bolt it down, I won't be able to remove the grill. And the issue with that right now is that when I build my hinges, I'm going to build it off the front side of the old core support. So I can't do nothing with the grill there. So what I'm going to do, remove the grill, build the hinges, then bolt the hood to the fenders. So let's go ahead and get this taken apart. Probably got some zip ties on there I got to cut, but yep, that'll do it. There we go. Get the grill out of the way. And now we can use this flat area. Don't worry about that rust. We're not going to do anything about that. So we got those flat areas to weld our hinges on. So I'm probably going to tap these boards out of the way so I can start building my slide mechanism. So I'm going to do that, and we'll get the parts in here, grab some tubing, and see what we can figure out. A little bit of cutting, welding, and grinding as far as getting this hood tilt all sorted. Okay, well, here's my master plan. I've got these kind of strap hinges here for big gates that I'm going to clean off this lip here and weld that to the core support there and have a corresponding one just like that, and that'll allow our hood tilt. Now, as far as getting the slide out, so all I have to do is pull it forward, then tip it so I don't have to cut my fenders, is I've got two different size tubings, which one will slide in the other. So pull it out, tilt it forward. So I'm going to measure out a couple of lengths of this tube, get it cut, equal lengths for each side, and then that'll mount inside the frame here. So I'm going to grab the death wheel and we're going to cut this stuff up after I make some measurements. Looks like we can get away with 7 inches from behind the core support to the steering box. So I'll cut out a couple 7-inch chunks and then a little longer for those. Actually, I'll do 6-inch chunks just to give myself enough room. Plus, it'll give me plenty of stability. So grab a marker and we will get cut. All right, well, we got our pieces cut. So we got 6 inches and 9 inches. So that'll give me plenty of room to mount that other hoop, and it'll give me plenty of slide. Now, as far as how far we want it to come out and just not come apart, what I'll do is I'll slot this side and then drill a hole and run a bolt in here. So if we have a slot and a bolt, it can only go so forward and then it could stop. And as far as removing the front clip itself, we could pull that bolt out and then just slide it out completely. So I am going to pretty much get these set up in the frame here. Now my frame does taper in a little bit, and what I'm going to do is mock these up and see if that taper will really affect anything. It's not much, and there is enough room in here to allow for it. So I'm going to grab a tape measure and see what my difference is from right under core support to back by the steering box. So at the core support, about 32 and a half. And at the back, we're a little under a ½ inch. That might be a little excessive when we're looking at how much deflection we actually have. So I might need to space the back out. We'll leave the front static and then maybe cut out a little plate to weld to make up that difference. So just double check our measurement to see what the difference will be. So 32 3/4 to 33 1/4. So that's a ½ inch difference. We'll need a 1/4 inch spacer on either side back here by the steering box and the coordinating side on the opposite side. So I'm going to dig up some metal. I think I have some 1/4 inch stuff laying around. And that's what we'll do. We'll grind all this up and then we'll get to tacking our outer tubing in with that 1/4 inch space in the back side. Well, I got a little mini kind of fab table set up. It's just a sheet of 18 gauge on a couple of sawhorses. Now what we're going to do is, one, we're going to clean up these tubes here. And I got a couple pieces of steel and we're just going to weld them to the back side of these tubes, and this will give us our proper standoff with the taper of the frame. Also too, after I get these welded up, or probably before, I'll get them cleaned up and then I will drill my hole to be able to have a bolt in here and have it stop probably up here, because we're going to want probably a good amount of slide forward to clear everything. So I'm guessing if I slid it pretty much all the way up to the front, we should get a good 5½ inches of forward slide to be able to clear everything. And I mean, we'll really find out when we put it together. I'm not much of a planner and I don't intend to start planning. So let's switch to the old worn out flat disc here. And let's start cleaning up these tubes here. And then we'll grab a drill our hole. And I also just happen to have a 5/16 by 18 tab that I was using for the exhaust manifold bolt that I broke. And that'll go perfectly right in there. And I have some 5/16 by 18 bolts that'll thread right into there. So that should work out pretty slick. But first I'll clean them, then we'll drill the holes and make some slots. All right, my next step is going to be measuring these up and making our slots. So I'm going to grab a straight edge, and we want to get as much slide out of this as possible. So we will go to 6½ inches, or 5½, my bad. 5½, right there. And we'll grab a larger drill bit than our bolt, obviously, because we want proper room for it to slide. So we got our holes drilled. Now we just need to make our slits. So I will grab an actual, we'll do it this way. We could do it with a paint marker. So like that. Just like that. Let them dry. I'll make my other mark, and then I'll go in with a death wheel and just slit that out. Then we can weld our plates to them, weld them onto the frame, and then we can really get cruising on making our slide and our hinge. So let's keep going, I guess. All right. Well, now we've got our slits in, and what I could do is we'll line these up with the back of the bigger tube. I'll actually grab a punch it, drill it, and tap it, and that's actually, they go this way. So at the back side, punch it, drill it, and tap it. Once we have our bolt, we'll only be able to pull it out so far. So that is how we'll go about it. Slide them in, get them even. And we will punch, drill, tap, and get our bolts fitted in there to make sure it works. I'll have to deburr some of that on the inside, but I think that'll work out pretty good. Well, we've got our slots in. I got my bolts threaded. I actually need to get a little bit longer bolt because I want it to bottom out in the other side of the tube, so I can actually tighten it a little bit so it won't go anywhere. Put a little bit of Loctite on it so it won't rattle out going down the road. But there we go. There's our limit. So when we pull the front clip forward, we won't pull it directly out of its track. So the next step is I'm going to leave those like that so I know the orientation of each of these. And then I'm going to take these two plates and weld them to the back side of the bigger tube here, and that way, like I said, we'll have our difference made up in the taper of the frame. So I'm going to fire up the welder, grab my helmet, and we will tack these on quick and move over, clean up the paint off the frame there, measure out and get these tacked onto there, and then we can start building our hinges. So that should work out pretty well. So let's go ahead and get this tacked on. Two. Angled in the ground cable here. All right, now we're going to get ready to tack our slides on. So the reason I made this tab so long is I actually want it to glide above the frame rail so we don't have any interference there. So we're going to set this one in place right where it should go, and I am going to tack this one in place and then make my measurement for the other one. So we're going to get this up and level right where I want it, which would be right about there. And we'll go ahead, hook our ground up, and get her welded into place. We'll hook the ground up over to this clean side here. And see what we can accomplish. All right, I've got those tacked in pretty solid, not finished welded yet in case I made a mistake, but I've got my kind of hinge bracket sitting on top of them to let me know where I need to trim where this core support kicks out. So I'm going to go ahead and cut these lips off and clean up the core support itself. Then we can go ahead and cut these down, weld them to our smaller pieces, and then set the height here. So first, clean up and make it fit. Okay, now we can lay everything in and kind of see where we're gonna land here. I think I have my ends where I want them, but I'll make a quick measurement to verify that that's where they need to be. And then we'll go ahead and trim these to sit on top of there and line up right where we need them. All right, well, we got our hinge set up. We got the short side cut, and I've got a 7/16 bolt in there right now. It's a little too small. I'm gonna try and find a bushing that would kind of sleeve in there to make it absolutely perfect. But I put 2 washers in the center, locked it down with 2 nuts because I didn't pick up lock nuts. But we have ourselves a hinge that I could theoretically drill holes, tap, and put grease zerks in once I get a sleeve, or a 1/2-inch bolt doesn't quite fit. Maybe if I ran pins in here, 1/2-inch pins would work, which I might do, but for now this will suffice. Now, these were zinc coated brackets. Anytime you're welding with zinc, you want to grind it off. Acid, typically take it off too, but just keep that in mind when you're working with zinc quality hardware store components, because this car deserves nothing but the best. So my plan of attack here is going to set our hinge right where it needs to be and tack our lower hinge into place. Then I can move on to setting this up, which I need to actually adjust this. Now we can move over to that side, get it mocked up. I'll get a few good tacks in it. Where it's spaced out here, I'll probably just put a piece of metal in behind it. But for now, we're just gonna get it tacked and make sure that my theory works. Because once we get this set in, and I'm sure it won't fall apart, then we'll bolt the hood on and do a test tilt to see just how it works. So hopefully I'm not insane and this goes well. So I'm gonna do the other side and continue on. Well, we got the front clip supporting itself on the hinges. Now is the less than fun part, where I throw the hood back on, get it lined up, and then go up in the fenders and drill. I'll probably put 8 bolts in for now on the inner side of the flanges here, and I'll bring you in once we get the hood back on. Oh, scratch paint. All right, so we got the hood. Pick you up here to show you. Got the hood pretty well set on. And we do have some big gaps up there, but those will get sucked in once we go up in the wheel well. So I'm going to try and do this so you guys could see and I could see so we could drill these. I am going to probably drill 2 holes per side and get some bolts in there. That way I can tilt it up after I get this done and finish drilling and bolting. So let's keep going. There. So what we'll do is do the same 2 holes on the other side, and then I can pull the bolts out, pick the hood back off, unbolt the fenders, and then drop the hood back on, bolt it back on, and we'll tilt the front end and finish it up. Well, I guess this is the moment of truth. Let's see if I can tilt. My first feeling is as soon as I pull it back, it's gonna drop, but let's see. Ah, it's a hood seal up here. One thing I should have remembered before I put the hood back on is the hood is actually capturing the cowl seal, which is why it's biting me so bad. So, I guess we're just going to yank and pull. There we go. Thing number 2. When you get real excited about a project, you forget the little things. I need to cut the bottom of the quarters because they're caught. So I need to cut those off so it clearances, but we will attempt anyway. That one's clear. The slide's working for the most part. Now, let's see if it tilts. We'll get our stool here, and I think the area it needs to be. We really need to pull this together because it is quite flimsy as it stands right now. Oh God. Well, how about that? It tilts. Not as smoothly as I initially wanted, but this gives me the chance to get up inside, drill the holes, and get the hood bolted, because you can see this dropped, and I needed to get it forward so I could bolt the hood but it's a tilt front end. I'm actually pretty happy with that. I'm gonna stand behind the camera here. That is pretty awesome. So let me take some time. I've got a couple things I want to do while I have it tilted up. I'm gonna clamp it together, drill holes, put it back down, probably lube those slides a little bit so it works a little easier. And yeah, just using my brain thinking here. Yeah, so get it bolted together, drop it back down, pull the hood off, bolt the grill back on after I finish up the stuff on the front. But there's a couple other things I'm thinking about as well that should help me along here. So I'll check back with you in a minute. Well, after a break and some re-engineering, here's where we're at. So I went ahead and put a brace across to each one for a couple reasons, because when we pull them out, we want them to stay together. So we got those braced, it won't flex in and out. I also decided against bolting the hood on, because when I attempted to roll everything forward, it just basically bowed the fenders. So we're gonna tack weld the hood to the fenders. That's really the only way to get it structurally sound. And also too, when I initially pulled it out, it really wanted to drop because these aren't an exact fit. They're real close enough that grease will take up the room, but we need something to support it. So I sacrificed some old sockets. And what this will provide is a very cheap, easy, what I have on hand way for these slide outs to glide over the frame rail as it comes out, which that's about the length that this front clip will slide forward. So it'll keep it from nosing down like this. We'll be able to pull it forward without it getting all wonky on us. The other thing I had noticed is that when I go to pull on the front of it, the core support moves independently of everything else. There's just too much flex in there. So what I did was I took some of this angle I still have lying around, and we're going to locate it up at the core support and then weld it up in there, and that'll brace everything. And from outside the car you won't really see it, but it'll brace the core support to the fenders themselves, so everything will move nicely as one unit. And I already measured to make sure a radiator would fit between these braces, so that's how we're going to do that. One other thing I'm also going to do is put a triangular brace in from these two pieces of square tubing to keep it from going like that. So I guess I'm going to cut a few little pieces, get them tacked in, and tack in those braces. And I'll bring you back when I decide what to do up here where there's bolts are. I've got an idea for that, and I'll bring you guys back for that. But for right now, I'm just cutting and tacking in braces to make all of this square. So we've got our hinges done. Use bolts on the top side just because there really wasn't anything to weld to. So spaced and bolts, so that's solid. So like I said, I'm going to get to putting these braces in, do a couple more finish welds, and I'll bring you back with my solution up there. All right, so here's my solution on locating the tops of the fenders, because clearly I can't bolt this down, but I can use this tab as a location. So you can see I've got that opened up, and I made these plates that will go in there, and I'll just weld it to the fender. So when I bring the whole front end, it'll engage this, and it'll be underneath that washer. And these are just shouldered oil pan bolts. So the thread's much smaller, and then it's got this thicker area, and then got a flange up here. So what I'm going to do with this fender is I'll have to push it in as I weld that so it lands in the proper location. So I'm going to get this side and that side tacked in, and then I think we can put the grill back in, lay the hood on, and tack the hood, and maybe, just maybe, we'll get this front end to tilt. Well, I think I've got the kinks worked out of this front clip. Now, there's a couple things I need to do that I'll decide to happen in this video or not. One is set up something to locate the lower part of these fenders, something that kind of ramps in and catches it so it ends up the way it should be. I'm going to have to brace these as well. Most likely, which might actually be my solution, is bend a brace to keep these kind of pushed out, and then we can just do hood pins to hold them. But are you ready to see if it tilts halfway decently? Let's do it. So, stool out of the way. Works a little better with some grease. Pull it forward. Now with these fenders kind of tweaked in like this, I might have trouble flipping it forward, but we'll see. Yeah. This is as I suspected. There we go. Take their stool underneath. And we got ourselves a tilt front end. Like I said, I gotta brace these or get something to capture them down in this area. But the hard project is done, and it's fairly easy to pull forward, which I have that bar there, so I'll bring you guys in, show you what we got going on. We'll put it back down, which is actually a bit of a process with these wanting to hit these posts, but I'll show you the whole process anyway. But first, I'm going to bring you in and show you what we got going on here. Okay, let's bring you in to this Frankenstein of a hood slide or front clip slide and tilt. So like I said, tubing into tubing with stops so I don't pull it completely out. These will also serve, once I get the correct bolts, will also serve that we can just either slide those out of the tubes and pull the front clip, or we can pull our bolts out of the hinge. So there's two ways of getting this apart. Now, we've got this crossbar that connects them so they don't try to move independently. And once I get the gussets in here, it'll make it much easier. So that'll be something that I do at a later time, because right now I spent a good chunk of the day on this and I just want to play with it. So we've got our braces in from the core support to the insides of the fenders, and that keeps the core support from moving independently of everything else. We've got the hood welded to the fenders, and we've also got our catches up here that when we lay it down, they come in and they catch that bolt. I threw some grease on there because you see it's gonna need a little grease. There's probably a better solution for that, but I'm a truck driver and this is just what we do on our tilt hoods. So We got the slides greased and a little bit of grease on the frame. Now this is probably a little better look at this socket on here. What that achieves is when we're moving it back and forth, it keeps this bar from binding or doing any of that. Now what I'm going to do in the future is leave this socket here, of course, but get a bearing that's just a tick bigger diameter than this socket and put it on the end, and then the bearing will ride on the frame instead of having to have grease there. But I had a couple 11/16 sockets that were spares. I sacrificed them to make this work as it should. And like I said, we'll probably, I don't know which way I'm going to go about it. I might build braces to kind of keep these out when I'm dropping it, or have like a hook set up that goes into a catch down on this kick panel, so when that fender comes down, it'll catch a hook and guide it. The reason I really don't want to do that is I need some way to secure this down. It seems it will stay, but I don't want it rattling forward going down the road, so I'm probably going to have pins here. Once we get it closed, it'll just kind of ride up over the pin and lock in, which will make the front clip tilt almost a two-person job. So that's something that I'm going to think on for a bit before I really math out how we're going to keep the clip secured down and back towards the car. So all in all, I'm pretty happy. This was a happy accident, is that the grill perfectly clears that front bar, which is something I was worried about. And we got just enough slide. I was kind of thinking about it as I did it. It's like, oh, that should be enough. And it is. So I'm very happy about that. The grill clears and the whole front clip does front clip things. As far as securing it in the upright position, now that this is done, I can work on building my rad support, which will go probably across these tubes here, build it up, and then I'll have bars coming from the firewall that'll drop just behind the rad, and we'll just have kind of gussets coming off that'll support the top of the radiator and all that. And then that will have cables like a big truck that'll hook here and up to the hood. So when we swing it forward, bing, it stays. So I will put the phone down, take a quick break, and we'll show you guys the not so nice process of getting it back down for the time being, but it does work. All right, now the process of putting it down. And admittedly, it's a little heavy, but you just use the scoop to push it and try to set it down as gently as you can. I really don't, well, I suppose it won't hurt too much. It's just sharp metal inside the scoop. There we go. Now the process of pushing it back, actually I bent that out a little bit. That might help. That too. The grill isn't completely secured, but there we go. Just need to make sure the catches line up, and I think they are. I might have to do a little bit of tweaking on the underside of the hood where the old hinges attach to kind of get it to ride up, but there we go. And she's back in place. Now, don't just sit there and tell me that's not absolutely killer. A home brew with just steel and stuff I had lying around, some quality parts from the local hardware store, and some sweat equity, and we got ourselves the world's first tilt front end checkered marathon. So I'm gonna play with this a little more, just because, man, is it cool. I've been really waiting for this point, and I am super excited now that it's a functioning tilt front end with original parts, which no one's going to yell at me for doing this to these particular checker parts because they're not good. They'll do for a gasser like this. It ain't like I took NOS parts or a nice car and did this. So calm down, checker guys. But this is pretty rad. So we'll check back in with you guys in a little bit. Well, there we go, guys. We officially have a world's first on top of a world's first. Now, I made the claim, according to all my research and everything on the internet, that this was the world's first checker marathon built into a gasser. And now it's also the world's first tilt front end checker marathon. So 2 world firsts on this little YouTube channel. You're only going to find it here. Now everything up front is buttoned up. Some things I'll do in the future from the other side of the camera, obviously, is I'm going to put pins down here to locate the fenders and lock them in. I do kind of have a brain sprinkle on how I'm going to accomplish doing it one person. And that's going to require a couple of springs and like a guide plate, which maybe I'll do a quick snippet on the engineering of those, but that's how I'm going to do it. So I am so stoked with this. I mean, out of the whole car, the entire build, I'm probably the most excited about this because I love tilt front ends, and it's really like a quintessential gasser thing to have a tilt front end to reveal whatever power plant's going to be in there. Plus, it makes it easier to work on. So that part is done. Now, in the next video on the checker, we got a couple options. One of which is to suss out the rest of the steering. I got a steering column in there now, and we can do the steering shaft, get all the linkage set up, and then, kind of work mechanically on this. Get the brakes buttoned up, get the lines run, get the manual master cylinder put in and all that. So we could do tinkering stuff like that, or we can letter this car in the next episode. So it'd be lettered on the fender with A gas down here, lettered on the rear quarter, and we can start to prep the roof panel by using a vapor rust to get that cleaned enough to where we could put a primer sealer on it before doing our final paint on the roof and the wheels, which is yet to be revealed what color I'm going to use. So, look forward to that, and, maybe we'll do the lettering next episode. Maybe we'll do tinkering or some other kind of little project, because that's where we're at on this car. Now, with this heavy fab done, we just have a little bit of paint and a lot of nut and bolt stuff to get us where we need to be. So like all the time consuming stuff is done. All the special stuff I wanted to do that parts don't exist for this car. And I'm very, very much budget oriented with this build. That's why, even though there's kits to do a lot of this stuff, I build my own for a couple reasons. The pride in doing it myself, and the fact that it's cheaper. So there we go, guys. Now, if you could, go down, like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Hit the little thumbs up icon so you can stay tuned and get updates whenever my videos are coming out. And also, other than all the projects you can find right here on my YouTube channel, you can find updates and other posts on a lot of the stuff I'm working on Facebook at T.N.T Garage and Performance, and on Instagram at T.N.T Garage and Performance. So here we go, guys. I think this wraps up a really cool part of this build, and I can't help but grin when I look at it because it's so awesome. So I guess I'll stare at it some more. So remember, until next time, if it ain't broke, fix it till it is. We'll see you soon.